Welcome to the York Daily Record editorial board. My name is Scott Fisher. I'm a opinion page editor here at the Daily Record, and we're here with State Representative Stan Saylor, Republican from Windsor Township and southeastern York County, essentially, right?
Right.
Welcome, and we appreciate you taking the time to come talk to us. So, essentially, you had sort of requested to come and talk to us, and so I was going to leave you at least the opening agenda up to you. I'm not sure what exactly you wanted to talk about.
Well, I thought as the new chairman of education, since the governor's focusing on education, that I should come at least give you an opportunity to ask me questions and talk about where I see things going on education or any other issues as well, being the, I guess I would say, the senior member of the York County delegation. But yeah, I think, you know, I want to compliment the Daily Record on its editorial on the kudos you gave to Dave Meckley. I think that was important. It's really angered me about the way he's been treated. You know, here's a guy who's very active in the community, been very charitable over the years here in York County, has always worked for the best interest of everybody, and has come under severe attacks for just outrageous reasons. And I think that's a shame. The governor and I were just talking about that, is that Dave is just really an honest, fair guy who has an outstanding record, and people have used it as their own political motives, and that has really angered me, as you have taken notice, my own accounts. For somebody who owes back taxes to the school board that they're president of, to me is outrageous. It wouldn't happen anywhere else in the county. No school board member would get elected if they owed back taxes. And to me, that says a lot about the bad choices that are being made in the city of York, and that's why the city's in the problems it's in now. You can't elect people who can't handle their own money, and this is a perfect example. And I don't mean to just pick on Margie Orr. There's some other school board members that I don't think have truly done the best interest of the children of York. Is that you are asking residents, I'm asking you as a taxpayer to pay your taxes so I can fund the school system, and you as school board president own a business you rent out where you're bringing income. This isn't where you're a poor elderly little old lady who can't pay your taxes on your home. This is a rental property you have, and you're not paying your business taxes technically. And to me, that's an embarrassment. That shows that you really shouldn't be where you're at. And like I said, I don't mean a personal attack on her, but it goes to the core of the issue of why the city schools are in the shape they're in. They're not electing people to the school board who, one, make good selections in the management team that they have in New York City. Too many times, particularly in New York City, teachers have made tough decisions, but they haven't gotten backed up by the school board. They haven't gotten backed up by the management and some of the principals in that school system. When I talk to teachers and I talk to management, I have done that. All I hear from the middle management, and I've heard from teachers, is we try and make changes and we get no support from principals, we don't get support from higher ups, and we don't get support from the school board. To me, when I've got management and I've got teachers coming to me and saying, Stan, there's here, I've got former school board members coming to me and telling me things. There is a problem here, and it really comes down to the overall management. All the school districts in York County and across the state could use more money. There's not an issue about that. But there's other school districts. I mean, take Lancaster City as a perfect example, right next door to us. They could definitely use more money, but they're not in the shape that York City is. And they're going to get more money, and York City's going to get more money. But if you don't spend it in the right directions, those children are going to continue to end up in juvenile detention centers or in our prisons or on welfare. And that's what angers me, is when Tom Wolf came to me 2.5 years ago and said, Stan, you have to step forward. And I said, no. I said, Tom, I don't represent the city. Why are you asking me, first of all, a Republican, come in to interfere in a city that is, you know, very predominantly Democrat?
But you've long expressed your thoughts about the city school district.
Sure, because I care about children. But for me to come in 2.5 years ago at the request of Tom Wolf and Eric Menser and a lot of other business people in York, I asked my delegation to support me on it. And Seth Grove and Ron Miller and everybody stepped forward and said, okay, we'll do this. But because we did care, but our agreement was there would be no politics. Stan Saylor wouldn't sit down and say, here's the plan, a Republican plan, or here's the Democratic plan. It would be, we would find one person that all of us agreed to, which was Dave Meckley. And Dave would have 5 years to fix it. If he failed, well then we would move on to something else. And I think that's what's upset me, and Tom and I just talked about that. The governor and I just were on the phone about that, is how I'm very disappointed that we interfered. The governor decided to interfere because of whatever reasons. I have my own thoughts, and I told Tom about those. And him and I are very honest with each other. I think very highly. And I know the governor has, at heart, has the best wishes of the children of York City. If I was as convinced the York City School Board was as good as Tom's wishes are, I'd be a lot happier. I do think Tom, in the end here, and him and I are going to continue to work to resolve some of these problems in the city, along with our delegation, we'll get there. And at least that's my hope after my discussion before I came in here today. But it is my frustration because I've seen 2.5 years of a gentleman like Dave Meckley try to solve the problem and not come to an agreement with 3 different proposals, while the school board of the city of York came forward with nothing. I think that's where my frustration is. I don't think that Stan Saylor has all the answers. That's why I thought, instead of Seth Grove having a plan or whoever it is having a plan, we appoint the guy who we feel has good business sense, can bring curriculum together, pull everything together. And he had a citizens advisory group that put a lot of this stuff together, and in the end the school board rejected all 3 proposals. And to me,
isn't that sort of
frustrating.
nature, though? I mean, you're kind of coming in and stepping on their toes, saying, they were elected, they're duly elected board members, and it's their job to run the school.
It is, and they failed. They failed to do their own proposal. I mean, look, if you don't like my proposal, just, we hear this all the time. Don't just say no. As politicians, you have an obligation, and I've always believed this. You don't just say no. You got to counter that proposal with something better.
Well, their counter was give us more money, basically.
Absolutely. Well, Redline could say the same thing. We could even do better in Redline or Dover or wherever. Give us more money. Every school district says that.
Well, we know the city school district, its tax base is threadbare. They have serious issues with funding. So.
But they have mismanaged it. The Auditor General's report, the federal government reports on how they spent their federal stimulus dollars have all showed that they misspent it. So if you give them more money, they still spent it in the wrong areas during that period of time. So that's my whole point is you can make that argument if you're spending the dollars you're receiving in the proper areas and you still need more money. Lancaster City needs more money, and they'll do better if I give Lancaster City more money. I know that because they're doing well. No, again, maybe Stan Saylor wouldn't agree with how Lancaster City's run or how Dover's run or whoever. That's not my job to sit down and micromanage. But it is my job to, as a member of the House of Representatives, whether I'm chairman of the House Education Committee or just a rank and file member, to hold people accountable for the taxpayer dollars that we put into the school districts. And that's where the problem in the city is. I don't disagree they need more money, not a doubt about that. But the bottom line is, when I give you money, I can't have an Auditor General coming down here who is going to be testifying shortly here in the next week or two about where he's been finding mismanagement in a lot of other school districts as well. And Governor Wolf and I, or Tom as he wants me to call him, has talked about how we're going to put more accountability in. And absolutely, we're going to put accountability in that will remove superintendents, restrict them of their license. Right now, you have a superintendent. He's here for 5 years. You know what? I'm going to move on to another school district because I'm not happy here. They keep moving around. It's like we were having that problem with teachers who were misbehaving in the case of child abuse in school districts, just passing the trash along to the next school district. We passed a law to stop that. The teachers can't just keep going from school to school district. The same thing with superintendents and principals.
You're saying that we have trashy superintendents?
I'm telling you, we have superintendents that are not doing their job in this state. We have, and they've got to be held accountable. Not the majority. It's not like,
Would you say that about York City superintendent?
I would say they've had problems, yes. I won't say they all were bad. Personally, I do know that there's been very bad management. Very bad management. But to sit down and say which one of the last 3 or 4 superintendents are totally responsible, it also goes to the school board. The school board picks those superintendents. The school boards hold those superintendents and the principals. It's not just teachers here or superintendent, it's principals as well. If you're a principal, you're a teacher and you go to a principal because that's who's managing each building, it's like in Redline. Our superintendent in Redline mixed up the principals because there were good performing schools and others that were not where they thought they should be. So he changed the principals around and realigned it a little bit to try and make sure all the elementary schools were performing. Now, for whatever reasons, he did that, and I think in the end it works. You've got to have the ability to fire principals and hold them accountable, just like you do superintendents. But again, Scott, you run this newspaper, or you run the newspaper. If you're not performing, she's going to fire you. I owned my plastering business, a construction company, before I got elected to the legislature. If my company failed, it wasn't my workers, it was me who failed. And I didn't do my job. If my workers weren't performing, it was my job to fire them. If it was financial, I mishandled the dollars. It wasn't my employees. So the same thing goes for schools. You know, you have a responsibility to give a child a good quality education that they can compete in the world today. And York City has it. And they're not the only school district. We've got Reading, we've got Allentown, who's coming up as well. All these schools are on the verge of bankrupt and educationally bankrupt as well. And it's not just about money, it's management. So, like I said, the things that have happened in York City could never have happened out in the rest of York County because it would not have been tolerated by voters. In York City, the voters have tolerated things that have gone on till it's got to the point. It's just like the state had to come in and take over Philadelphia.
Well, there are other districts in New York County that are struggling as well. Obviously
Financially, you mean?
No, well, yeah, Northeastern struggles financially.
Sure, absolutely. But it's not about, they haven't found mismanagement there. We have found mismanagement in York City, and not just to the tune of, you know, a few $1,000s. We're talking $1 million or more here. And $1 million buys a lot. And when you hear teachers talking about they don't get support, a lot of them give up. If you're, every day you go to work and you're beating your head against the wall, what do? You just do enough to get by. And that's what's happening, is if you don't get the support, because why should you bang your head against the wall every day and go home and have a heart attack when your employer, who's supposed to be helping you do the best job possible, just ignores it? And that's what's happened in our city schools. And it's not just York City, like I said. It's happening in some of our other city schools and in other areas of the state in some cases. But when you look at the money we spend, York City gets more money per student than any other school district in York County, over 50% of its funding. So it's not like the state's not coming in and doing a good job. It can do better, but so could Redline use more money. Redline is, I think, the third poorest school district in York County. And look at its record versus that. Look at Southeastern's record in academic versus York City. You know, Lancaster City's record versus York City. And in Lancaster, they have something that York doesn't have as much of. Lancaster has a huge population of Latino, a lot of Spanish-speaking students, a large population, largest in the state of Pennsylvania, and they're performing better. Could they be better? Absolutely. York City doesn't face as big of a problem in that area, but they're completely the second worst in the state of Pennsylvania. So that's my argument, is it's management.
These issues you brought up when you talked to central school students and it became somewhat controversial, do you have any regrets of using
None.
that as a venue?
Because you know why, Scott? Is I didn't bring that up. The students asked me. The students said, Stan, what's going on with York City? And I told them, well, you know, it's under receivership, because, you know, and I explained about Tom Wolf coming to me and asking me and the delegation to take over York City, actually get the Governor Corbett to take over the city by appointing Dave Meckley. Dave Meckley was picked by Tom Wolf and I and others. And then they said, well, how did it happen? And I'm thinking, you got to be honest with people. These kids are about to go and be registered voters. Now, if I were to say that in front of elementary kids, then I would be definitely wrong. But these are kids who in the next year or two will be voters in York County. They have the right to the truth. And I didn't say anything in there that really wasn't already in your paper and wasn't already out there. So for me to walk in front of that classroom of students who were asking tough questions to Senator Fulmer about marijuana, well, what about this and what about that, asking me tough questions about Central York and human trafficking and things like that, I was impressed. I mean, we all the time condemn our schools about, you know, they're not performing, and these kids, I mean, it was like, I'm going to say 150 to 200 kids. It's 3 sessions, and I think there was about 75 kids in each of the sessions. I came away from there really upbeat, saying, wow, these kids are into current events. Because when I was in school, that was a big thing. That was part of our POD class, was that you had to know what was going on in the paper. You had to read the newspaper. These kids did something that I hadn't seen in a long time in our schools. They really seemed to care and ask. They asked tough questions. So no regrets at all.
Okay. So let's sort of back up and sort of look at the big picture. The Tom Wolf's budget proposal, particularly when it comes to education funding and property taxes. You have suggested to us that there might be some things coming down the road, some changes and counter proposals. That's been sort of the big, we've looked at it and said, well, he's on this side and legislative Republicans are on this side. Where are they going to meet in the middle? So where are they going to meet?
Well, and that's a good question. I mean, in talking to our Republican leaders, I think we'll get a budget on the governor's desk by June 30th. I really do. Whether we'll have unanimity is a question. We've done it with Rendell one time, and of course he vetoed the education budget. I think there's room there to work with the governor between Republicans and Governor Wolf. The key is going to be give and take. I mean, I think the governor's asked for a huge tax increase. That's just not going to happen. I mean, when I say that, it's not about Republicans. I mean, if I put that vote on the House floor tomorrow, it fails with at least half the Democrats voting against it. Everybody loves the spending part of it. Ask the Democrats and Republicans. I mean, but I'm saying is Governor Wolf is a Democrat. Ask the 83 Democrats right now, how many of them are going to vote for the tax increase? And I think you'll be lucky to get 40 of the 84. So it's going to be about compromise, about getting there.
He was basically laying, here's my principles, here's what I'd really like to see happen. I think he knows that it's not really going to happen. What can happen?
Well, I think there will be increases in education. I think we can get a new funding formula done that's fair for poverty, for growing districts like York County, the rest of York County. York City needs additional dollars because of their poverty and some of the issues they face. No doubt about that. And that's what I want to drive at, is I want to unveil a funding formula different. And, you know, I asked Secretary Rivera, and him and I worked together, by the way, because I've toured York Lancaster City School District when he was a superintendent. I wanted to go see what they were doing over there. I've toured Baltimore County School District as well. So I think the secretary is going to be a good secretary, but the bottom line is you just are not going to get Republicans and Democrats voting to give all the cities 100% property tax reduction and give their districts 15%. I mean, Democrat, Republican, you're not getting reelected.
That's kind of what it comes down to, essentially. Right. The cities like York get basically 100%.
100% reduction, and that's not fair. If you're a retiree, you're a 65-year-old woman or husband and wife at 65, and you live in the city of York, and you make the same amount of money as me, and I live out in Red Line, you're getting 100% reduction, and I'm getting 15%. That's not fair to the working man and woman. If you're a millionaire living in the city of York, you get your property taxes totally eliminated, and if you're a $35,000 a year worker in Red Line, you get a 15% reduction. That's not a fair system. It has to be fairly equal across the board. I think that we need to structure, and I'm looking to structure a property tax reduction that will benefit both, but on a more equal basis. I think that we have to take in consideration that the person who makes $1 million can afford to pay their taxes a lot better than somebody else. We all know that. So how we structure that property tax reform is a key. York City has the highest property taxes in the county. No doubt about it, especially when you add the city and York taxes together for the school. So they're going to probably, in any formula, get a higher property tax reduction. They're going to get more school funding than, say, Red Line or Dover. But at the same time, it has to be a balanced approach, or you don't get people to buy in. And that's where the compromise comes in. And I think the governor's willing to compromise. I think Republicans are willing to compromise. I think the question is the overall spend. To go from $29 billion to $33 billion is a huge jump in 1 year. I give the governor credit. And I also by the way, I give Tom credit for the fact, or the governor credit for the fact that some of his proposals, they're tough proposals. Some of the people in his administration see it a different way. They come from Philadelphia. So, you know, they're going to favor certain areas a little bit more than I am. But to me, I'm not looking, you know, I don't live in the city of York, so I could say, okay, let's cut York City out because they only have one vote and we have 6 in the rest of the county. But that's not it. I mean, I'm proud of our York County delegation. You know, Seth Grove and the Keith Gillespie's and our delegation and Mike Regan, we take a great approach. And I think, Scott, you've been around here a while. We've taken an approach that York City is critical to York. And we've brought millions and millions of dollars of state dollars to the city of York for economic development. Just in the last 4 years, I have seen $20 million come out of the corporate administration that I asked for and our delegation asked for the city. I mean, there's times when I wish I could have said $20 million into my area, you know, to a degree.
Which projects were they? Can you just
the remodeling of the police and the market, some other money for Live for the work they're doing in renovations downtown and job creations in the city. So a number of economic development projects that we have supported 100%. And that's what I said. We understand that if we don't fix the city as a delegation, it affects all our districts. And I think that's a lot different than it was 30 years ago when everybody was, you know, I'm for myself and the heck with you. So we worked with Steve Stetler when he was there. We've worked with Eugene Pasquale. We have our differences. Even as Republicans, we have our differences sometimes on legislation. But we try to make sure that we work as a team because we realize 7 votes is a lot more powerful than 1 vote.
One criticism that I've heard about Governor Wolf's proposal is that, you know, it would lower property taxes, but it doesn't really address the pension issue, and property taxes will inevitably creep back up because of those expenses.
Absolutely.
How do those issues play together?
Well, and they will, and that's the
What would you
problem.
propose?
He does not deal with keeping the property taxes from rising up the following year, because we know the pension increases are going up about $600 million a year to these school districts across the state. So we have to deal with the pension issue if we're going to resolve this funding thing. Not only do we have to change it to a 401k for future employees, but we also have to deal with the current issue of how do we get a resolution on the current amount of money that's owed into that pension fund a year. You know, I actually served on a group of legislators who made recommendations back during Governor Rendell when he was cutting funding. And by the way, Republicans and Democrats were guilty of that as well. The House was controlled by Democrats, the Senate was controlled by Republicans, and they went along with the spending and cutting the funding to the pension plan and spending it elsewhere. In some cases, they spent it in education, but they didn't spend it in the pension system. So in all truth and honesty, school boards were told back then to set money aside as if they were paying the same amount. Some school districts did, and some of them are not having any problems today with the pension amount because they set that money aside, they earned interest on it, and they're making their payments without any financial difficulties. But others totally ignored it and went and spent every dollar. And so now they have to raise taxes because they did it. I mean, a perfect example in my own district where Southeastern School District years ago had to lay off, I think it was 12 teachers who had only been there 2 years because they had 10 kids in a classroom. I mean, how do you justify 10 kids in a classroom? So people made some bad management decisions there, and I felt bad for the 12 teachers because they weren't being laid off because the money wasn't there. It was some bad management decisions to hire those teachers when they weren't, that many was not needed. So, like I said, bad management isn't just in one district. I mean, you got West York School District who's building a tunnel for the football team as part of their building project to run on the football field. So the question comes up to us as legislators all the time, well, why aren't you funding 50% of education? Well, is it 50% of the tunnel for the kids to run on the football field? Is it 50% of the artificial turf that these teams are playing? We're talking amateur sports here.
So why do you let school boards do this? Why doesn't the state legislature take more responsibility? Because, you know, that's been my contention for a long time, is you guys don't really want to deal with it because then you'd have to raise the taxes and make the decisions at the local level on spending issues.
I think at times, Scott, we do want to do it, but because of the mandates we put down. But the other thing is, remember, the voters don't want us to. You know, we did that study about mergers, and we've looked at it, and Southwestern and Hanover voted against merging years ago when it would have benefited Hanover Borough School District and would reduce their property taxes, and the residents of Hanover Borough voted against it, while Southwestern voted to merge. So, you know, residents, the voters themselves make these decisions, and you sit there as a politician, and I say this all the time, I ask seniors, and when I go in and speak to seniors in political science class, are we a democracy? And I'm waiting for them all to say, yes, we're a democracy, because we're not. We're a republic. Stan Saylor is supposed to make as much good toward the majority, but protect the minority at the same time. So it's really difficult when you have voters with their little fiefdoms. You know, should we have all the boroughs we have in York County? But convince the voters, you know.
The voters don't even know who's running the boroughs half the time. That's the thing.
Oh, you can't fill seats.
Empty ballot spots for, like, you
Right.
know, local treasurer or, you know, borough council members, and they don't really care.
But I will tell you, York County leads the state in regionalizing and combining services. We're the #1 county in the state. I am so proud of York Regional Police. We merged the Windsor Township Police and York Township Police. Our services could be better. In fact, I maintain they are one of the finest police departments in the state of Pennsylvania, next to the state troopers. They're well trained, they're well governed, they work as a smooth team. I have never had better police protection. And the great thing is, you know, these municipalities have got to learn. If you have a police force of 5 or 6, if somebody leaves your force, whether it's retirement or moving to another police department, that other officer, it takes several months for them to be trained. So they're off, so you've lessened your accountability, but yet you're still paying for that police officer, but you've gotten less coverage. Regionalization has not necessarily cut our taxes in our Windsor and York Township regions, but what it has done, it has kept our taxes from going up. Because if we had our own police departments, it would be skyrocketing. So by combining services, we were able to hold the line. So sometimes regionalization, everybody wants to say, oh, you're going to cut my taxes if we regionalize. No, it's about saving tax dollars overall into the future. You know, sometimes you can make cuts right away, but in the long run, what it is, it's about saving dollars in the future, so we're not raising your taxes to cover that. And people forget that. They don't look beyond today. Politicians as well as voters. So that's one of our problems.
So let's talk about Redline there. They essentially just gave up their police department and rely on state police. What do you think about that situation?
I've been somewhat critical. I stayed out of it because I don't live in Redline Borough, but the residents I hear are not happy. I think it was a bad decision. I encouraged Redline Borough back when we created the regional police to join our regional police because they disbanded theirs. And they decided, oh, well, we don't want to make that investment, which would have been a lot cheaper for them and a lot cheaper today. But Redline Borough is a borough. They're going to have more crime there than other places. That's just natural of any municipality. York City is going to have more than Spring Gardner or the surrounding townships. But Redline was paying $1 million a year when they merged or started to buy services. And their services were cut from $1 million down to $500,000 for police protection. They saved $500,000 a year for 10 years. That's $5 million the taxpayers of Redline saved. Now all of a sudden, for a $50,000 increase, I believe it is, or a $60,000 increase, they want to pull out of the police department, and you're still 400-some thousand below what you were paying 10 years ago. That makes no economic sense at all. And it also lessens the protection. I got to be honest with you, I don't know how they're doing it right now, but the state police are going through Redline. I can't get them to go through the rest of the county like that. And I don't know if it's because one of the state troopers, sits on city council or borough council. I don't know if that's the reason or not. And I'm not making an accusation there. But what I am saying is, my southern end of the county that has a heroin problem, not the rest of my district, not that there isn't some, but Delta in that area has no police protection. And for police to get there, it's a difficult time for them to react to crime. They're not there as a regular. But they're in Redline all the time. I've never seen so many state police at one time anywhere in this county as I've seen in Redline all of a sudden.
Some people maybe there have been legislative proposals that basically said that municipalities of a certain size that don't have a regional police department or their own police department should pay some penalty for state police.
I actually had legislation in for that. If you were a township and you were over, I think it was 10,000 people, you had to pay. Because we have, like in Cumberland County, there are several there. There are some townships as big as 65, 85,000 who do not have their own police department. The state police cover it. And I think that's unfair for the taxpayers of the state to pay for it. And in the case of Redline, they have roughly, I think it's about between 6,000 and 7,000 residents. They should be contributing to pay. Because they're a borough, they have more higher crime. The citizens deserve better protection than having state troopers going through. Because there's no way the state troopers can provide quality protection for everybody in my district who doesn't have police if they're responding to Redline all the time. And that's just the way it's going to be. And I have concerns that rest of my constituents aren't getting the same services from the state police.
Just circling back to education for a moment, there's a school formula commission that's basically doing its work, trying to figure out how we should allocate funding statewide. What do you anticipate coming from that committee?
Well, our hope is that there's going to be a fair funding formula that's going to serve the growing school districts, the poverty areas, as well as those areas that have a higher percentage. And so we include Philadelphia as well, Lancaster, who have a higher percentage, and New York City has some as well, but not to the great extent that others, that have a second language problem of immigrants living in there. Legal immigrants, by the way, not illegal. Lancaster has a huge Latino population, and that makes educating students difficult. But we do have to deal with better programs for that as well. I think that, again, just throwing money at those problems sometimes is not enough. We have to make sure that in Lancaster City, for instance, and York City, anytime you have parents who are sometimes single moms or parents who aren't up to the standards, we realize in poverty areas, students aren't getting at home what they need to support. One of the things that we know is that really year-round schooling would be the solution for most city school districts, not just York City, because what happens, and believe it or not, I asked this question at Kennedy Elementary the other week. I was there reading to the third grade and I talked to the fifth grade. And I asked them this quick question, and it was funny because usually when I ask about year-round schooling, 99% of the students are like, no way. The class was actually split 50-50 of the fifth graders. The argument was, which was funny, they were so intelligent, that they said, well, you know, it would be good because I forget some of the stuff till I come back next year to start the new year. And that's exactly it. But in poverty areas, it's even worse. So that is something we need to look at. We need to look at also juvenile crime between the hours of 3 and 6 is when a lot of the juvenile crime takes place. Maybe we need to extend the school day a little longer to help some of those issues. Maybe those hours that we extend the school day by maybe an hour and a half can be used better, particularly in poverty areas, to provide additional tutoring and in-school help that they need. But we don't look at those solutions. We keep, saying, well, we have this poverty problem. Well, I remember in Lancaster, I talked to a teacher in Lancaster City. They got a federal grant to do tutoring after school. Well, here was the problem. Tutoring, they had 10 and 12 kids in a tutoring class. A teacher cannot tutor 12 kids at a time. 2 or 3, yes. 10, 12 kids, no. We have to better spend those dollars. So that's where I was somewhat critical in Lancaster, that you can't have a teacher tutoring after school 12 kids. So again, it's about wisely spending the dollars you get from the state or federal government and reaching to those kids. And I think that we don't do that enough. We sit there and say, okay, these kids need tutoring, let's just throw them in a glove and hoping for the best. That's not giving the taxpayers. If you need more money for that, either raise property taxes, I hate to say that, or fight for more funding at the school level. Yeah. But fight for more funding and make sure that politicians understand what you're dealing with. And I think that's why I've always been a real supporter of pre-K counts, more money for that, and Head Start. I mean, I've been arguing for a long time, we need more money for Head Start. Pre-K counts to me is, I still have some concerns, it doesn't do as well as Head Start. I think Head Start is a great program the federal government has. It's there, it's consistency, better than pre-K counts, but it's there, we have it in Pennsylvania, but we need to do better.
A lot of letter to the editor writers are basically saying, hey, I not only don't want Governor Wolf's budget, I want property tax elimination.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say to those folks? Is that going to happen?
I don't think elimination is going to happen, and it's not because Stan Saylor doesn't want it. If Seth Grove or Stan Saylor or Keith Gillespie in York County and Kevin Shivers, who's a Democrat, I think we want it. The problem comes down to getting the votes to do it. You need 102 members of the House. You need 26 senators and, of course, the governor. And that's one thing I give Tom Wolf credit for, is at least he proposed. He's the first governor, Republican or Democrat, since Governor Casey to actually say, hey, I want to do something about property taxes. So I give Governor Wolf a lot of credit for that.
Corbett really didn't talk about it at all.
Right, he did. He seemed to know it was a problem.
Yeah.
And so my whole thing comes down to is, though, it's got to be a fair situation. But you also got to understand, there's parts of the state that have no interest in property tax reduction. I talk about it all the time. Kathy Rapp is a good friend of mine from Warren County. Kathy has I think it's a 45-acre farm and a 2-story home on it that she lives in, and a barn and all that kind of stuff. And she pays roughly $2,500 a year. Stan Saylor has an average brick ranch home in Windsor Township, 3-bedroom, nothing fancy. Like I said, everybody drives by my house to see where I live, to make sure I don't have a gated house. And I'm paying roughly $6,000 a year. So you can see, Kathy says to me, Stan, I get what you're talking about, but why should I raise the taxes on my constituents to give you property tax relief when we really don't have a problem up here? My taxpayers don't want it because they're fine with it. And Kathy has a big property. So if you think she has 45 acres and a 2-story home, what does a person who has just an average typical home up there pay? Probably $1,000. And her seniors up there in her area, they're lucky if they pay $500 a year. Because again, they get the property tax rent rebate just like those in York County do. The difference in York County is if I'm paying $3,000, $4,000 as a senior citizen property taxes, and I get $500, it doesn't do a whole lot for me.
But one thing I've heard that argument before, that big chunks of the Pennsylvania, as some people say, aren't really interested in it. But I got to figure that there can't be that many representatives there to really hold it up. How do the numbers work out? There got to be people in the Philadelphia suburbs who want the Pittsburgh side.
Here's the problem. Yeah, Philadelphia has no interest in it, has not had any interest. I asked Mayor Nutter to get us support to pass it because they have the Sterling Act. And in Philadelphia, the Sterling Act is where you live in Montgomery County right outside the city, but you work in the city. You pay a 4% income tax roughly into the city. So they make out really well by you living outside and not putting children in school, but they still get 4% of your income. So they have no real interest in property tax reform. I'm trying to work a piece of legislation together that they will have an interest in. But you also, the people around the Philadelphia region live next to the state of Delaware. In the state of Delaware, they have no sales tax. So when you talk about increasing the sales tax, they're saying, well, hold on a minute. My business community is going to have a higher sales tax now you're proposing to get rid of property taxes. And my people are now just going to walk across the border and buy in the state of Delaware their cars and everything else. So that's why they don't support it in a lot of cases. But it is a lot of cases where, you know, Scott, this, again, we talk about these fiefdoms where people have their little territories. It's got to be my way or the highway. And that's true, too, just in the legislature. Some people think their property tax reform is the only solution. We've been, you know, I remember Governor Casey, and I supported Governor Casey's property tax reform back years ago before I was in the legislature. But there were a lot of Republicans and Democrats who boo-hooed it and defeated it 4-1 in this state. And so you can see right there from that thing, 4-1 it lost on the ballot. How many people in Pennsylvania don't see it as a problem? In York County, we probably have 20% of our population who don't see it as a problem. But I think that I don't know a politician in York County or Lancaster County who have not, Democrat, Republican, it doesn't matter, have not said, we're for getting rid of property taxes.
You just hinted a second ago that you have some sort of proposal that would incentivize those lawmakers to go along with some sort of property tax?
Well, you got to put together a plan that provides them relief in the Philadelphia region that they can go along with. And so that's the real key of putting a piece of legislation together, and that's my hope in the next week or two to see if I can put something together that they can buy into. It's like I said, I know I'm a supporter of 76. I'm a co-sponsor of the bill. Could pass it, but it's not going to happen. I know the maximum votes it's going to get is 70 votes. You need 102. So I could sit here and for the next 30 years and hope that I can get those votes at some point. But in the meantime, I have seniors losing their homes. I have people who are just really struggling. And so I think we have to move forward. So I'm going to put another piece of legislation together that moves us at least partially there. We've been, like I said, we've been waiting in York County well over 30 years for property tax reform, and it hasn't happened. And it's not because other legislators who were elected before Stan Saylor didn't try. It's just we only have 7 votes in York County.
So what kind of leverage do you have to help to get those folks in those areas of the state, the legislatures?
Well, you have to put a package together, a tax package that benefits them in multiple ways. Because they're going to have to vote for taxes that their people don't want. So they have to benefit in certain ways that the people there can say, oh, okay, I'm getting relief here or there. And I think, you know, mixing that in with Governor Wolf's proposals on education funding, we can pull that together. And it's how you structure the tax relief.
Okay.
And the other thing that's key in property tax relief is that you can't have property tax relief this year and next year the property taxes start going back up again. You have to have something that people have faith in is truly going to keep property taxes down and more of a reliance. So we're looking to incorporate that into a piece of proposal as well.
When do you anticipate that being released or introduced?
My hope is that we'll have something together in the next 2 weeks that we can take to the public. It's like I said, I expect criticism of it, even here in York County, because there are going to be people say, well, 76, 76, 76. And it's like, guys, I get it, you know? But at the same time, and we're probably going to have a vote on House Bill 76 on the House floor this year. And Stan Saylor's going to vote for it. But I know I count votes. I know there's probably no more than 70 votes for it. So, you know what? Does Stan Saylor continue every 2 years to vote for 76 and still not bring property tax home, you know, relief? So you either, as a politician, you can either play the game, oh, I voted for it, you need to vote for me again, or do I say to my constituents, it's like, look, we can't get this done. Let's try and get something else done. And again, that's my proposal.
Do you see any kind of compromise this year on Marcellus shale extraction revenue?
You know, it's tough. I think that depends on what we do with corporate taxes. The thing that people don't understand out there is is that in Pennsylvania, all the Marcellus Shale companies pay 9.9% corporate taxes. In the state of Texas, they pay 0 corporate taxes. In Texas, they pay a 7% severance tax. In Pennsylvania, they pay 9.9% corporate tax, and they pay roughly about a 2.5% severance tax. It's called an impact fee. So they're paying here roughly, 11, 12, about 12.5%, 12 point whatever, corporate taxes technically when you add the two together. And York County benefits $400 and some thousand a year here, which we don't have any drilling going on in York County. So I don't know if that happens. I think it's a good bet. If I were betting, if I was gambling, I'd say yes, something's going to happen. But I got to be honest, we have to be careful, because when you have 100,000 jobs that were created and are still there, and you start cutting back on Pennsylvania's natural gas, there goes jobs. And Pennsylvania, I hate to say it, but we have been terrible at promoting job growth here, simply because our corporate taxes are so high. Why does everybody move from Maryland to Pennsylvania and still work in Maryland? It's because taxes are high in Maryland on individuals, but low on corporations. And in Pennsylvania, taxes are high on corporations and low on individuals. So that's our problem. We've become a bedroom state. People from New York moving into Pennsylvania, driving to New York every year.
But we have some big budget deficits to deal with. So, I mean, a lot of the lawmakers I've heard across the state talk say we're going to have to do something on that front.
Right. And I think there could be a compromise worked out with some kind of Marcellus Shale. It's not going to be what the governor proposed. I think that's probably too high. It's going to have to come down. But we have to be very careful. Again, going to take a close look at it when it comes up. If it comes up, we'll look at how everything's where money goes. I think that's like every legislator. I'll take a look at the proposal when it gets finalized and it comes before the House. I want to know that York County is getting its fair share of money. If it's not, if Red Line's not getting its fair share, or Central York or Dallastown or whoever, then Stan Saylor's not going to vote to send more money somewhere else and not to York County.
How about the state liquor store privatization bid? Obviously, I think Governor Wolf opposes that idea. Do you support that?
I'm a co-sponsor of the bill. I voted for it now twice.
Yeah.
I don't get it because, one of the things that I hear people, I hear this all the time. Why isn't it privatized? I hear it from people who've never lived outside of Pennsylvania, but when they go to the shore, they go to Maryland or they go wherever, they're like, I can't believe this. It is amazing, because I will tell you right now, we don't bring any money into the state treasury that's not from the taxes. All the money made on the markup on liquor in Pennsylvania goes to pay salaries, pensions, and health care. We make no money on that markup.
None at all?
None.
Because you
None.
hear that argument all the time, that the revenue and so forth.
And by the year 2021, Pennsylvania will have to contribute out of its taxes to pay the salaries and pension benefits and health care of the workers in those state stores. That's our projections. So you're either going to have to really raise liquor prices a lot higher than they are now in Pennsylvania, where everybody complains about, to pay salary and benefits. We're talking about roughly about 3,000, 3,500 employees. And we have in there, they can go back to college, get other state jobs, transition in, any number of things that we're offering. We're not getting, they still keep the benefits they've earned, but the truth of it is, you're with Utah. I do not want to be with Utah. I'm sorry. I want to be with the rest of the world. I want to be in a modern world. And the great thing, Scott, is we bring in $1.5 billion. Maybe, depending how you structure it, it could be more than that. It could be $2 billion. That money can be put into education. It can be put into the pension fund. It can be put wherever. And the great thing is this. If I sell Scott Fisher a state liquor store, here's the great thing about it. Right now, all the money we make is off the taxes. So we're still going to make all the money off the taxes when Scott Fisher sells the liquor. The great thing is Scott Fisher has to make a profit. And Scott Fisher's going to have to pay corporate taxes, which means we bring in more money. Now people say, well, how much? I don't know, because that depends on how all the private owners, how much money they make. Some are going to be better than others. Some may end up bankrupt. But the bottom line is, in some places, if you got to Potter County, maybe liquor prices won't come down because there's less state stores there. So the competition is there. But I'm going to tell you what, probably in York County, the liquor price is going to be cheaper. And it's not about making liquor prices. For me, I'm not looking to sell the state stores to bring liquor prices down. I'm bringing them because we should not be in private enterprise of selling liquor and then telling you to buy more and going out and arresting you that same night. It just makes no sense. So my whole thing is, the more deals about more DUIs is absurd, and it's out, and it's a lie. If you want to keep those employees, state employees, just say it. Don't make up lies to try and justify it. And those are the things that frustrate me in government is instead of sitting here and Stan Saylor debating with whoever it is across the table on liquor issues, I keep hearing these things that just aren't accurate, and they don't want to debate about the real issue, and that is we're trying to help those employees. When I go into Red Line Liquor Store, they all know I want to sell the liquor store, which means end their jobs. But they're still nice to Stan Saylor. They've always been nice to Stan Saylor. Now, maybe some aren't always nice to everybody, but bottom line is it isn't about the state employees that I don't like them or anybody else doesn't like them. They do a fairly good job. But the bottom line is it is about we should not be doing this.
So just a story about the state stores. My wife sent me to the state store on the night before Thanksgiving to buy a bottle of wine for the dinner the next day. They had one cash register open, and the line was all the way around the inside of the store. I was just stunned. I couldn't believe that it would be managed like that. Just astonishing. And the other thing is in the convenience issue. And I don't know if it's still true, but at one time there was only one state store in Adams County, which is...
There's more than that now, but...
Yeah.
And like in York County, they just opened a brand new store, and the question is, what was wrong with the one on Eastern Boulevard? It was pretty large. I got to be honest, I haven't been in the new one. The only time I go to the one on Eastern Boulevard is on Sundays if I need to get a bottle of wine because I'm going somewhere and take it as a, kind of a house thing. Usually I'm in Red Line's liquor store. But it just comes down, they keep saying, oh, well, if we open the stores longer, that we will be able to make $180 million more. Who are you kidding? You open the stores longer means you have to have more employees, which means more benefits and more pensions and more health care benefits. You don't make $100 million. Who are they kidding? I have no problem with having the state stores open, but if you privatize them, I'm sure they're going to be open longer. So the key here is, again, where are you getting $180 million profit? You haven't factored in what it's going to cost you for the state employees. It's like I said, we have a projection that shows by 2021, you as a taxpayer will have to take money out of the tax dollars we collect to pay the state employees, which means we'll even lose revenue by 2021 on our state stores from the point of what we're already bringing in.
Okay, so obviously we need to pass a budget before June 30th and so forth. And the thing that drives me crazy every year is that you guys always wait until the last minute. Are you like journalists? You have to have a deadline in order to get something done?
Maybe we are like you. I gotta be honest, it drives me crazy. I like being out in the middle of June. We used to do that when Tom Ridge was governor. I think the problem has...
do it earlier. Why can't it get...
Here's the problem, I think, is I do think that it has changed a lot more. Politics has changed from when I first got elected, even among Republicans. It isn't always about Democrats, Republicans. I think that's a misconception in Harrisburg, is that it's always this battle. In most cases, we as Democrats and Republicans agree on a lot of things. Budgets are a problem because Democrats always like to spend more and tax more than we do, of course. But it really comes down to Republicans sometimes among themselves sitting down, having different priorities of where money goes. It's like I said, if being a Republican or Democrat got property tax reform, when Democrats were in charge, property tax didn't get done. When Republicans were in charge, it didn't get done. So it's about regions. I'll tell you, the battles are more about regions than they are about Democrats or Republicans a lot of time. So that is the problem in getting a budget done sometimes. And I think sometimes the leaders have gotten into the habit under Rendell. They got so spoiled that, oh, well, I gotta be honest, I like having June off. June is one of the greatest months in the whole year because it isn't that hot and I don't have to be standing around the Capitol. So if I'm the leader, it's done in the first part of June. But I'm not. But personally, I think that it just got into that habit. Under Tom Ridge, we had budgets done in the early part of May. I don't have a problem with being around in June to do other things, but I don't like waiting till last minute because always, in my personal opinion, whether it's a budget or it's a piece of legislation waiting for a crisis, when you pass something and you're in a crisis, you don't do as good a job. You miss things, you screw things up unintentionally, and all I can say is...
Is that happening this year? Probably not.
I expect June 30th. I will say this. If it was Stan Saylor leading the fight, I can't speak totally because I guess I have to have the Senate counterparts, but if I'm the majority leader, and I'm nothing against Dave Reed, he won and lost by 1 vote, I would strive to have the budget done no later than the second week of June. I just think you have time after that. Members deserve to go out and get out of there. But I also would bring, I think one of the things we did this year is we brought members in earlier in January to get started early. I like that. I think that's good because time runs out. You know, one of the things that I've been trying to do early as the education chairman is report bills out of my committee and get them moving early, not just waiting till, oh, it's budget season, let's get all these bills done now. April's going to be a very busy time for me on the Education Committee. We're going to have a lot of meetings. We're going to do a lot of bullying legislation out of the House Education Committee. We have 3 bills to bring out. We're going to be working on education funding formula in the committee, a lot of other things as well. So I like getting things done early, simply because I think that gives me the ability to look at things a little closer and correct things. If I report something out of my committee and it's not at the last second, everybody has time to go back and fix it if we miss something. Because sometimes a word, just one word in a piece of legislation can totally change the intent of it. And that's what people forget. Sometimes, you know, everybody argues, well, we need attorneys writing things, which we do. That's, you know, that way nobody gets screwed up. I haven't figured it out. Well, we have all attorneys writing these bills and they still get screwed up.
Senator Scott Wagner is focused on union issues and paycheck protection, and I just did a piece recently on the issue of paycheck protection. I think it's kind of a misnomer. Can you talk a little bit about that issue?
Well, here's the thing. It comes down to this. If you as a business, newspaper business is a business, you can't go out and make your employees, your executives, contribute to a plan. You can't. It's against the law in Pennsylvania. Politicians, I can't make the employees of the House who are not unionized contribute to a campaign fund. It's a simple thing of making sure that the law is carried across the board. It's not about if the unions can do it, if the state employees and the teachers union at the local school board can be deducting political dues, why can't corporations do it? Why can't politicians do that? It's because we say the law says no, you're not doing it. We have people in jail because they did that, you know. And that's the whole point is you cannot have one group excused. It's just like the National Healthcare Program. You can't create special exceptions for one group and not everybody. That's not, I don't see that as good government. And again, you can say it's a farce. You're somewhat right in that, does it cost us a lot of money? No, but that's not the point. It isn't about how much it costs us to collect that money. It's about nobody else is allowed to do it. Why do you grant a special privilege to one sector of the community? You know, if you're a non-union company.
Republicans don't seem to have much trouble getting, you know, campaign funding. And I mean, the system seems to be.
We don't get corporate checks. We're not allowed to get corporate checks. How many unions were just, what about the unions that were just cited for using union dues for political purposes and not filing their forms and using things illegally?
They need to follow the laws, obviously.
They do, but they don't. Yeah. You need to look at the PSEA magazine, and I can show you month on end. That magazine used dues money to promote Rob McCord, then eventually it used it to promote Tom Wolfe. That's wrong. You as a union member should have the right, just like every other employee in a non-union shop has the right to direct their money. You go up to Wagman's, they have a highway PAC, construction PAC for highways. Every year he asks employees if they want to write out a check to the PAC, okay? And they do if they want to. Otherwise, they don't. That's it. That same thing should be held to everybody. He cannot forcibly take money out of their paycheck to do it. Why, if you're a government employee, do you have that right? Why are you different than any other employee?
They have, that's kind of the, when you join a union, it's understood that part of your dues are going to go to political.
No, you're forced to join the union. If you join Dallastown School Board or school district.
You don't have to have it taken out of your paycheck. You can pay a check. You can pay it any way you want to pay it. So it's not like it's, nobody's paycheck is being.
Look, I have no problem with deducting dues on there. But campaign contributions is against every principle, and people sit in jail every year. People go to jail, not just in this state, in other states as well, and nationally, for pulling the stunts that go on. I just think you can't have certain laws that affect certain groups and exceptions for others. There's got to be consistency. I know it's been around. I think 1970 is when it's been around from. Why? I don't know why it was granted then. Because, again, like I said, corporations can't do it to their corporate management. They cannot say, you know what, Scott, you guys are management of this company, and we're deducting $100 a week or a month, whatever it is, from your paycheck. Unions get to do that. And
but again, they get to decide whether it's deducted.
They don't get to decide where it goes. They don't get to decide where it goes.
We're not going to agree on this issue.
No, we're not. Because I have teachers in my district. Now, I have been supported by the teachers a lot because I've always been a big supporter of education. We don't always agree on the issues, okay, as teachers and myself. But I've been blessed. And a lot of the teachers want money to flow to certain legislators. And they can't because their union doesn't give them the right to do that. It's a certain group who selects that.
They need to take it up with their union and become part of the... Anyway,
I
let's
know.
move on. I understand that...
Are you admitting you lose this argument?
No. Just quickly, we're getting a little late, but you're campaign manager for Susan Burns. Just curious why you think she would be a good choice for county commissioner, and I understand that Commissioner Chronister is basically going to run as an independent now because of ballot signature issues.
Right. Well, I tell you, I've known Susan's parents for a long time, went to school with her brothers, and she was ahead of me, I think, in school. But just an outstanding York County. I've looked at what she's done with the health center. When she first started, I remember the struggle and the hard work she did. It wasn't like she wrote a check out. She went out and raised the dollars to build that. I've been there when the kids have gone through for years, adults as well going through it. I've seen what she's done with veterans. She's a real person who cares about York Countyans, and to me that's important. I think one of the things we miss a lot of times in politicians is the desire to get a solution to a problem. You know, you talk about the budget. To me, it's about getting it done, not sitting there and debating it. We can debate, but the majority wins. Let's move on. Susan's about solving problems, and that's what I like about her. We have things that we need to do in York County that in some cases I don't think are getting done. I think we could do better in job recruiting here with commissioners getting more involved in that, in job and company recruiting. You know, I want to leave that up to them. I don't want to micromanage as a state representative how county commissioners do it, but I think they could be more involved in job creation, attracting businesses here, and working with the Chamber of Commerce. There's a number of other things I think we can do better with our Veterans Affairs and stuff like that. No criticisms, it's can we do better? And I think that's where Susan impresses me the most. She's going to strive to make everything better. You know, and like I said, I'm not one who really runs a negative campaign, so I'm not going to criticize anything that's going on. I just know that if Susan Burns is county commissioner, things in York County will be better than they are today.
Okay. Blake, did you have any questions?
No, I submitted my questions to you, so I guess we did.
No, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come talk to you. It was an interesting conversation.
Very good.
Interesting spring, I think.
I'll be glad to come back anytime.
All right.
Oh, I think while you're still on camera, you should explain what onion snow is.
Oh, I need to explain onion snow. Clint didn't understand what onion snow. He said he heard it around here today.
I never, where did the name come from? I don't know.
It is a symbol when the last snow is called an onion snow, which means that you can plant your onions now. So it's, you know, how their season, and the reason you wouldn't hear it, because if you're from another state, that temperature change, or when you're allowed to plant your vegetables, whatever, changes. But in Pennsylvania, around here, the onion snow is considered the last snow. That means now I can plant my onions.
How do you know it's the last?
Just
You hope and pray. You know, tomorrow's the first day of spring, and we're getting snow on
It's
it.
so nice today. I can't believe that it's going to snow tonight. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So, anyway,
Well.
thank you so much.
Glad to be here.